Hey Arindam, thank you for joining us today. Uh, Thank you for your
Mhm,
time for an interview. Uh, I have your resume. I have seen it,
mhm.
and I wanted to start with knowing about your project and what are the technologies that you're using in your
Mhm.
project.
Okay, sure. So I'm working in a reporting project where we deal with application logs and we have to generate stats out of the logs. So basically, in the beginning, we used to work with MapReduce, and then we started moving to Spark. So currently, we do all aggregation and transformation using Spark, and then we store the aggregated tables in like aggregated data into Hive tables, and then we run some KPI jobs. We also call them as reporting jobs that read data from Hive tables and generate some final stats, and we store these stats into Oracle database. And then we have our UI that fetches the data from Oracle and then displays it to the end users.
Okay, you said that you
So
are.
basically, we're using
Go ahead, please.
Mhm. Yeah. So what I'm saying, like we're using like Hadoop, okay, Hadoop for storage, and then we have Spark, which is using Spark for the processing, and then we have the Oracle, which we are using for the final report storage.
Okay. So first question first. You said that you started
Hmm.
with Hadoop MapReduce and then you moved on to Spark. So what were the major
Yeah.
drivers behind
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
moving to Spark?
Yeah, so first thing was that the development, so it takes a lot of time to develop MapReduce applications. Okay, so basically, even if you just want to read some data and apply filter, you have to write at least two or three classes. Okay, that was one reason, and then the main reason was that we wanted to improve the performance. Like we had some jobs that used to take around 7 to 8 hours. We are able to bring it down to around 2 hours. So
Okay.
we have some reporting jobs, okay, so that we want to we want to get completed by 9 a.m., okay, so that the managers are able to see the reports in their morning time. So this is one of the main reasons.
Why do you think Spark gives you better performance than Hadoop? What was that? What are the
Yeah, so
feature in Spark? What are the improvements in Spark which gives you better performance?
mhm. Yeah, so the first thing is that it is in memory. It does most of the calculations that it can in the memory itself. So that's the main reason. And apart from that, it can do a series of optimizations on its own without the like in MapReduce, the user is solely responsible for doing the optimizations. But in Spark, like even if the user is not writing a very optimized code, then also Spark can do certain optimizations on its own. So first, the main thing is the in-memory processing capability.
Okay, let me change the question. Uh, the same question I'm going to
Uh-huh.
ask in a different way. Uh, uh, it
Hmm.
gives auto optimization. All those features are good, but how Spark Engine is different
Uh-huh.
from Hadoop Engine? What extra it does? So caching only comes in play when you are going to process the same data
Hmm.
again and again, right? And
Hmm.
usually in
Hmm.
reporting projects, you will have series of operation. So same data is not
Hmm.
getting processed again and again, right? So what extra
Yeah, that's
Spark
true.
Engine does uh, that makes Spark
Hmm.
faster than Hadoop?
Yeah, the extra thing is in-memory processing capability, right? Like in normal MapReduce, what it would do is we have the map phase first, and then like we'll go to the reduce phase. Okay, but in case of Spark, like we can have a series of transformations in the map phase itself. But in like MapReduce, they would probably go with more than one map phase. And if we have also more than one map phase, it will write the intermediate data to disk, and then it has to again read back from the disk and do the processing. So basically, the disk IO has reduced greatly.
Right, agree.
So
So
like yes, so disk IO is yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's right. Arindam, what are the optimization that you have done in your project?
Yeah, so first of all, in the beginning, I didn't have much idea about Spark. So basically, I went ahead with the generic configurations that they had set up. And then like after 2 or 3 months, I realized that these configurations are not proper. So I actually changed the executor memories and number of executors. So they were using a higher value of executor memory, like 50 GB, and I reduced it so that actually helped the bigger applications to run properly. And after that, like mostly we are doing joins with one table called country. So basically what we have in our master data, we have one field called country code. There we don't have the full country name. Okay, we only have like for China we have CN, for USA we have USA, like that. So we want to know the full country name, so we have to join with another table, and we call it as a country mapping, country region mapping. So like we are joining it with that table, and that table has like some other information as well. So its size was around 70 or 80 MB. So like so the default, so it was not it was doing the sort merge join for that also. So I figured out that like its size is 70 or MB, so I can go with broadcast as join. So what I did is that I increased the threshold value of spark.sql.auto broadcast join threshold. I increased it to 100 MB. Then like Spark automatically did that broadcast as join for it, and I found some improvements there.
Okay. When you
Yes, apart from that, the most optimizations were.
go ahead, please.
Yeah, so like apart from that, like most optimizations were like in the query. So mostly we are writing Spark SQL.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, so those are optimizations were query based, and from beginning, like they had designed the system, like all the tables, all the Hive tables were partitioned on date. So we are actually like calculating report on daily or weekly or monthly basis. So all the tables that we have are partitioned on date. So
Okay.
there I didn't have to do anything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're given a work of optimizing some job, what are the steps that you take? What are the
Uh-huh.
things, ABC things that you look into?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so first of all, I check that what like suppose there is only one data set, so I will check its size, and then I will see like how much memory we're requesting, or how many executors are requesting. These two things I check first. Like suppose we are processing 100 GB data. Okay, so so the maximum parallelism we can get is for 1 GB we will have 8 partitions, so 800. So like we can have 800 tasks running parallelly. So basically I will check like how many total cores we are requesting. If that's lesser than 800, then maybe someone has given it 300 or 400, then I will increase that so as to increase the parallelism. And then I will also check the memory. So someone, if they have given like for processing 100 GB, they have given
Is it
150 or maybe 200, I will.
sorry to interrupt? Is it like a hit and trial that you will do,
Yeah, no issues.
or is there any method? Is there any sequence that you usually follow when you decide memory for
Yeah, this is
your
a
job?
sequence like.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, like the executors, that's mostly depend on the like the input size. So, like I said, if it's 100 GB, then I will go with 800 executors. Okay, and then like the memory, what I do is generally I give 4 or 5 times. Okay, the input size. So basically, if we have 100 GB, I give it 400 or 500 GB. And then like then
So
what I do is like I will check the. uh
okay. So if how do you decide that you need to
yeah,
increase the
then.
cores or executors,
Mhm.
while starting a job, or how do you need to
Mhm.
increase the memory to per executor? How do you decide on that? So looks like you're trying
Okay.
that I will
Mm.
increase it and then I will see how system is responding, job is responding. Uh, but how do you decide that you need to
Yeah, sure.
increase uh, uh,
Mhm.
memory given to executor, or you need to increase the number of executors?
Mhm.
Yeah, as per your job.
Oh, okay. 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 You were saying that how to decide, I mean, how I decide I have to increase the executors or the memory to a particular executor, right?
Yeah.
So basically, like, yeah. So basically, if I'm to increase, if first thing, if I have to increase the number of cores, then I generally go with more executors. Okay, because the default configuration is 5 core per executor. So I don't want to increase that. So basically, if I have to increase cores, I will go with more executors. Okay, and then if I have more executors, naturally I'll be getting more memory.
Okay, what I mean to ask was that do I need, how do you decide
Mm-hmm.
that do I need to give more memory per executor or I need to increase the number of executors? Now, what are the symptoms in
Okay.
job or logs that I will
Uh-huh.
see which will
Mm-hmm.
help me make this
Mm-hmm.
decision?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So the one thing is what I told you is like if I find that like we have around maybe 1,000 tasks spawned in the first stage, okay, and then I found that only 500 are running. So like I can assume that we have given 500 cores, and like if we have enough resources in the cluster, we have given 500 cores. In that case, like first thing I need to increase the cores. So if I'm sure that I have to increase the course, then I will definitely go with more executors.
Mhm.
Okay, and naturally I'll be getting the memory also, extra memory that I need. Yeah, so
Okay.
like mostly I haven't faced some such circumstance where I have to decide between increasing memory of an executor and taking more executors. So that's
Okay.
mostly I have done like in terms of the course.
Okay. Okay. So do you understand difference between executor and an executor core?
Okay, so uh, executor, executor and executor code. Okay, so basically, like an executor can have more than one course.
Okay.
What we have is yes. So if you're running on Yarn, so like for executor, we will getting a container.
Okay.
So that container will have some memory and course associated with it.
Okay. If I talk in terms of process and thread, how will you relate executor and executor code to process and thread?
Uh, to process and threads. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, like what Spark does is like it for completing each stage. Okay, each stage it create a number of tasks. So
Okay.
it can it will be running each task in each of the executor's cores. So if we have 100 tasks and we are given maybe 100 or more executor cores, so in that case, so Spark will be using 100 of the cores, and it may not use the remaining ones if there are any.
Okay. Good. Have you worked on Hive?
Mhm.
Are you comfortable discussing questions about Hive?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, uh, suppose I have written a series of queries, which so every query creates
Hmm.
some table, and then next query reads that table and creates a new table. So there are a series of steps which are represented
Hmm.
in Hive queries. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Some of my
Hmm.
tables, I do joins within those queries, and I do group by operations, and
Uh-huh.
you know, for some reason
Hmm.
that whole script is running slow. Can you suggest me that what are the
Uh-huh.
things that I should look into to improve the performance of my Hive,
Hmm.
script?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So like one thing we can do is like we need to check if the table are partitioned or not. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe in most of the cases you would like to get like daily or weekly stats. So I need to
Mhm.
check if the tables are partitioned or not on date. Like if it's not, they are not partitioned on date, we would be like fetching all the data and then doing the filter.
Mhm.
So that's one thing we can do. And apart from that, like if they are already partitioned, then I would see like how is the join performing. So if the join is taking time, and then we might have to go for bucketing as well.
So, okay. So you have
Yeah.
mentioned about bucketing, and you have mentioned about partitioning. Can we just go ahead and use bucketing and partitioning in all the scenarios, or we have to take care of a few things? When to use
No,
bucketing?
no, no.
When to use partitioning?
No, no, no. Yeah, sure, sure. So partitioning, partitioning, we can use actually most of the times if we know that we want the data, we want to access some part of the data in one query. Okay, like I said, if we want reporting on daily or weekly or monthly basis, then partitioning is definitely a good choice. Or maybe we want to fetch, like we have some data set, okay, and we have data around for all the people of the world, then we can go about creating partitioning on the country. In that case, in some queries, we might be interested in fetching data for a particular country. That will help a lot. And
Okay.
then bucketing, it will depend basically. Suppose we have one particular table, okay, and we are joining it many times, maybe with some 5 or 6 other tables, okay. Then we can go ahead and create a bucket for that table. So like bucketing is also a costly operation, but then if you are doing joins multiple times with that table, then if we are doing bucketing, it will be beneficial for us.
Do you know about small file problem uh, that may come in if you do too much of partitioning, if you use partitioning in certain scenarios? Would you like to discuss about that? When can it happen?
Okay. Yeah, in our case, we don't face it because we keep the data for only 2 to 3 months. Okay, and our tables are partitioned on date, so we are not keeping the data for much duration. But then, if you are keeping the data for maybe 1 to 2 years, then we will have a lot of files. We can yeah, for in that case also bucketing can help if we have a lot of small files.
Okay, let me
Bucketing it
create
will
that
help us
scenario.
to decrease the number of files.
Let me create that scenario. Let
Mm-hmm.
us assume there is a table called with columns named ID, name, age. Okay, and for some reason I'm a beginner in Spark and Hive World. I created a partition
Okay.
on ID column. What will be
Okay.
HDFS file system look like in that scenario?
Yeah.
ID
So
ID is a
ID
unique.
name, does it mean that ID has a?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you will have high cardinality for that column. Okay. So you will have a lot of folders. For ID, suppose ID has 1 million distinct values. Okay. So you will have 1 million folders, and inside then many files. So you will have a lot of files. So you
Okay.
won't be
You'll have a lot of
creating
files.
a partition on ID. You have to choose a field.
Right.
Yeah, you will have to choose a field that has lesser number of values, distinct values.
Exactly. Exactly. So now this is very clear that this will create a small file problem. What are the problems of small file problem? We will see discuss about that in a few minutes. Uh, but there could be a
Yeah.
scenario where we don't have any column in our table which has low cardinality on which we could do partition.
Okay.
Okay, all the columns
Partition. Okay.
will have high cardinality. Let's assume that's the scenario, and the table is
Okay.
very huge, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
want to still improve the performance of my job. I cannot use partitioning there because it will uh, increase the number of small files. What shall I do in that scenario?
Okay. Yeah. Then bucketing is definitely a good choice if you have high cardinality.
Okay,
Okay. So bucketing, but it will improve performance of the joins only.
okay,
You
it
will
will not
you will end up
improve the performance of select
scanning all
operation.
the data. Select operation, no, not in Hive, I think. Yeah, we like in bucketing we can. No, no, no. If you are just selecting a part of the data, okay, then it can improve the performance. Like we can select data from a particular bucket, but then in normal select operation, it won't help. In Spark, I think like it actually helps. Like when if you are like applying the filter condition on the bucketed column, okay, so like it will just scan that particular file or group of files. I'm not exactly sure about this in Hive.
Okay, cool. One more question, probably then Satyan can ask his question. So when you have written your code and you have built your project, how do you collaborate across team to merge their code into your code and then build project and deploy it in production? How do you take care of that whole end-to-end cycle? First of all, what is your
Yes,
development
so
environment?
this is a bit different.
Sorry. First of all,
Okay,
what is your
okay.
development
So this
environment?
is actually a bit different. So yeah, I'm saying. So basically, we have a framework. Okay, that we have an internal framework where what we can do is like we can create workflows there. Okay, so what we and each work like in each job of the workflow, we can give certain configurations like the Spark configuration, and then we can also set up the Spark SQL query. Okay, so that's what we do basically in our project. So apart
Is
from
it
that,
something?
like if we want to build our own chart, then we have to. Uh-huh.
Is it something like Informatica?
Yeah. Then like if you no. It's not like
Okay.
Informatica. I like the tool is actually in this internal. So basically, what we have is we have an UI. Okay, so there, like any other, I haven't used Informatica. I have seen Talent. Okay, so there in Talent, what we do is like we pick up some components, right? So here we have certain job types, like
Okay.
basically a Hive load job we have. Okay, so what we do is that we'll pick up that component and add it. And in that Hive load job, what we can do is like we can give the input path, okay, and input path or input paths. Maybe we can have more than one path, and then we can we can give the names of the temp table, and then we can define the SQL that we want to run. So basically, this framework allows us to run Spark SQL job only. Okay, and apart from Spark SQL, we can do simple ETLs. Like if you want to do certain transformations and all, we have a different job type there. Okay, I mean internally it would run Spark jobs only, but the configuration is like that. And then if you want to run your own jar, what you have to do is like you have to create the jar, and then keep it in the cluster, and you have to keep the path.
Mhm.
So that is the third job type that we have. So from there, it will call the jar.
Okay. How do you
Mhm.
schedule your jobs? In that setup, if you create a jar and put it in cluster, what is the scheduling tool
Yeah.
that
Ha,
you use?
ha, ha. Mhm. Yeah, scheduling tool is like we are using only cron.
Cron
So
jobs.
so
Okay.
what we have is like we have cron. So basically, you would ask me like how to ensure that some dependent jobs run
Right.
only after their parent's job has completed. So that is being taken care by that workflow thing. Okay.
Okay.
So it has like we can create one node after one node. So we will just schedule the parent node. Okay. And when the parent node it finishes, it will automatically trigger the other nodes.
Okay.
So
So
that
your
our
workflow.
framework it has been deployed into the cluster.
So your
Yeah. So we have deployed it into cluster. And it has APIs like in cron we actually submit a and request to that API. Okay, like
okay.
we specify the time and then the API request, the workflow name, and then the schedule type, like we want to run it daily or hourly basis, like that.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Satya, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Arinav. So
Yeah. Hi.
I had a few questions to ask with you, and it's all like follow-up questions from what Harjit asked. So
Mhm.
while
Okay.
discussing, Harjit was asking
Mhm.
what is the small file problem. Okay.
Mhm.
So what is really happening in the backend when you are storing a small file? You
Mhm.
have thousands of millions of small files. Hadoop already had a lot of storage space.
Mhm.
So why we can't store the small files?
Yeah. So Hadoop, like it would be a like problem for the name node to maintain the metadata for all the files. Okay. So if you're creating millions and millions of files, even if the size is small, like Hadoop has the capacity, but then the name node has to maintain the metadata, like it has to know the locations of all the files and all. So that would be a pressure on the name node. And then also Spark, like if Spark also it can also face issues while reading those small files.
Okay. So usually in any of the Hadoop clusters, name node will be like a high configured node. Usually the RAM of
Yeah, yeah.
the name will be really high. So what is the problem of storing like the small files? Do you have any number like when you are storing a file in HDFS? What is the size
Mhm.
that particular file holds in name node?
No, I don't know the metadata size.
All right. Yeah. So
Mm.
so that's fine. Okay. So I'll go with my second question. And when
Yeah,
Zid
sure.
was asking about the Spark, why you moved to Spark from MapReduce, you were mentioning about in-memory computing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in-memory computing is
Uh-huh.
something new. So whatever you done with any computer, any PC, your application, your program that has to
Uh-huh.
bring into memory, and then only you can do your process, right? So what is the special
That's true.
thing that Spark does with memory?
That's true. Yeah, Spark does distributed processing. That's important. Okay, so basically, if you are only running a Java program, so it will be probably using one core only. And if my system has 8 GB of RAMs, so it can have max 8 GB. You don't have 8 GB for sure because there are other softwares running. So like distributed processing is the main thing. But then I was actually talking about the difference between Spark and MapReduce. MapReduce did have the distributed capacity. And then like if we also talking about in memory, suppose we have a 10 GB file, okay, and if you want to read it in Java or Scala, we'll read it in probably as an array, okay. So will it fit into the memory? It won't fit into the memory. It will give me if space error, okay. So in that case, Spark can easily do it because it will read the data in form of partitions. So it will with 10 GB of it will have 10 GB of data. It will have 80 partitions. So it will read the first partition. Suppose I'm assuming we have only one core. It will read the first partition. It will do the necessary processing, and then it will keep on reading. And if it goes out of memory, like if it feels that it doesn't have enough memory, it will store the data into the process data into the disk. But normal application, it can't do that, right?
Right.
It has to fit the data, whole data into the memory.
Okay. Okay. So it's my third question. It's a Scala question. So hope you
Mm-hmm.
have already Scala as well. So you are creating a class,
Yeah.
okay, normal class, and class had three fields in it. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
employee class. It has name, age, and salary. Okay. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I need to create objects for this class. Let's say like collection
Okay.
of. So I'm storing that in a set. Okay. Now whenever whatever you're storing in set, it will be like deduplicated and the order may not be as same as we are inserting, right? So I need to have
Uh-huh.
the unique elements in that set that has to be done with only name. So how will you achieve it? Basically, my question is, you have collection of your own employee object. I need to have the unique
Mm-hmm.
object that has to be done with name. I hope you got my question.
So the uniqueness of
Yeah.
the objects will be decided by the name.
Name, right?
Right.
Okay. Just could you just repeat the question once? I didn't get it completely.
Sure, sure. So you are creating a class. Okay, that class has three
Mm-hmm.
fields in it. One is name, other one is age, and salary. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating a series of objects from that class. Okay, I need to store that
Okay.
object in set. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so whenever you are storing something in set, it will be like deduplicate things, right? So if you're having list of
Uh-huh.
integers, when you're converting that into a set, the duplicate elements will be
Mm-hmm.
removed. So like that, for the object that we have
that's true.
created,
That's true.
that has to be stored in set, and that deduplication has to be done by name.
Just to add information
Yes.
to that, for clarification of the
Mm-hmm.
question, uh, by default,
Mm-hmm.
Scala will use name, age, salary, all three columns to decide if two objects are same or duplicate, right? What Satyan is
Same.
asking,
Uh-huh.
that
Sure, sure.
we want only name to
Uh-huh.
be the decider. We don't want to consider age and salary as the decider component, whether two objects are
Yes,
same
yes,
or
yes.
different.
Uh-huh.
Satyan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yes. So like I haven't used a Sate in Scala, but what I know, I used it in Python some time back. So I remember one thing, like what I have to do is like I have to like override one method. Okay, I'm not sure which method it will use to compare objects. So I have to override that method and return the name only in that method. Yeah. So basically in Java, Python, I think that compares a hash code or something like that. The
Yeah,
idea is like I have to know which method it calls. Yeah, and then I have to overwrite in that particular class. You have to overwrite that method, and I have to return only the name. Okay,
okay.
that's just a high level idea. I think
Yeah,
in Java as well, we have a method called compare to. I think we have to override that method in case of Java.
yeah, that's like the similar to that in Scala as well. We have a couple of methods. You just need to override
Uh-huh.
those with your own logic. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's all the questions I have, Rina. Thanks for your
Okay.
time.
Okay, I'll ask one more question about Scala.
Okay.
So when we do join, in Scala, say df data frame 1 and data frame 2, I'm joining, and then we give the join condition, right? Uh, it may be
Yeah.
inner join or something, right? Join condition that we give. When we give join
Yeah.
condition, we mention 3 equals to instead of 2, which is usually
Yeah,
in
that's true.
Java or something, right? Why 3? Why not 1? Why not 2? What is the purpose behind 3?
That's basically a kind of overloading where the equality of columns it has been defined by 3 equals. Okay,
Why
like
not 2?
operator, that's basically operator overloading.
Okay.
That's how they have defined that column class.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So what
like
are
in
the steps
normal
of
classes,
things
like
that happen?
maybe integers and
Go ahead, please.
yeah, so normally like for strings, integers, and other classes, they have defined the double equal to
Yeah.
that way. But like I'm not sure how to do operator overloading.
Mhm.
But that high level idea is that they have defined it like that way. That when we are giving 3 equal to, it will check the values. It will compare the values for equality.
Okay.
Like I'm not exactly sure about this.
Okay. That's completely fine. Cool. Thank you very much, Arindam. We thank you for your time. That's all the
Yeah, yeah.
questions that I had. Do you have any question for us?
No, no, thank you. I don't have anything now.
Cool. Thank you, Arindam.
Yeah.